So today I wanted to talk about creativity. I wanted to talk about vulnerability. How for me, vulnerability is an intrinsic part of the creative act. And I would also like to talk about AI in connection with creation and vulnerability. I wanted to share with you a personal story, something that happened to me, actually a dream that I had. And well, this is connected with this idea of vulnerability and creation. When I had just released actually the first album that I ever produced, it's called Fabula. I had a funny thing happen to me. I don't know if it was fun, but anyway, I recorded the album and I put together a few shows so that I could have a chance to play the songs live. And so I did a series of shows here in La Plata, the city where I'm from. And it felt so vulnerable, let me tell you, because these songs that I wrote for this album were based on a very personal story. And it was the beginning of me starting to share my songs and share my music. So for me, it was really a moment where I felt that I was really exposed in a sense. It felt really good and it felt light in a sense because I was sharing something that was honest and that was mine, and I was proud of as well. But at the same time, I was sharing some very deep personal stuff in my songs, right? So I remember that when I finished the first show, I went back home. I was very excited. I was very happy. And that night, I had a very interesting dream where I live in La Plata, right? I'm gonna give you a little bit of context. So this is the place where I was in my dream. I was in the middle of this square called Plaza San Martin. It's a very famous spot here in La Plata. A lot of things are happening there all the time. I think that a couple of months ago, even a Netflix show was filmed in this area. So it's a place where that's very emblematic for La Plata. And there's always a lot of people coming and going. So there's a lot of stuff happening all the time. So I dreamed after this show that I was in the middle of this square and I was having a shower. But there were four walls around me. So I was having a shower in the middle of the square with a lot of people coming and going, but I was not being seen, let's say. And then I started to see that there are a lot of buses coming in, and suddenly a lot of people, even more people in the square. And at that very precise moment, all four walls from my, say, I don't know what to call it, not very private bathroom, just drop. And I was there just butt naked, basically, in the middle of the square with all of these people coming and going. And that was the end. It was a nightmare, actually. It felt like a nightmare. That was the end. Thank God, that was the end. I didn't want to know what happened afterwards. That was the end of the dream. So I always remember this dream because it was a representation actually of how I have felt during the show at some point. I felt very exposed, very vulnerable. And I always go back to that because, and thinking that, you know, it's, for some of us at least, it's a natural part of the process of creating something new and putting it out there. Much like talking in front of a camera for some people as well. I know, it can be a little bit daunting. So every time that you dare to do something where your self-concept might be at risk, there is that kind of tension, and there's certainly, I mean, that tension it's happening all the time when you are creating art. right? Because you're doing something that's very personal and you're putting it out there for other people to see and maybe judge, right? And so that's the reason why a lot of people don't do sometimes, don't share what they have to offer. And I mean, I can personally, I mean, just, it's happened to all of us, right? So there's a certain vulnerability that goes into sharing what you have made, and it happens to all of us. For example, I had never shared this before, right? But I'm sure that this has happened to you at some point where you were wanting to, if maybe you dare to share something that you had made, or you want to share something that you are making or have made in the past, and you are not very sure because you're thinking that maybe it won't be received, or you don't know how well it's going to be received. So this is very common and it happens to all of us. That's important to know. But here comes AI, right? And I think that AI is making a promise. It's promising in a sense that there's going to be that tension can may not be necessarily part of the creative act, in the sense that you're making something with AI, and so the promise is that it's going to be perfect or near perfect, right? So the promise that we are being made is that we can bypass that vulnerability. We can prevent ourselves from feeling at least at risk of losing face, for example. So that is something that I believe goes against the creative act. It's not really, I believe, from my perspective, that tension that happens is important. It's important for your creation to feel that what you're making may or may not be well received by others. So it's about you doing it despite that risk, right? And going beyond what's expected, going beyond, going out of your depth. David Bowie, actually, I wanted to share with you something that a quote by him, and he said it so well. I'm going to read it now. And it kind of like explores this idea of going out of your depth and not feeling so safe when you're creating anything. And that ability of you doing it all the same. And knowing that there's something at risk and doing it all the same and going beyond what you have done before, that is part of the creative act. It's an integral part of it, and you cannot really bypass it, no matter what promises you're being made. So the quote says, "Always go a little further into the water than you feel you're capable of being in. Go a little bit out of your depth, and when you don't feel that your feet are quite touching the bottom, you're just about the right place to do something exciting." So that tension in that edge is where creativity happens. And well, there are a lot of examples nowadays of people using AI for creative purposes, and we can talk a lot more. And actually, there's a lot more to be said. I'm going to be exploring these ideas a little bit further in other videos. But for now, I would like you to just to leave you with that question of whether you would, if you're considering using AI for creative purposes, then consider that if it doesn't feel a little bit unsafe, if it doesn't feel like it's a little bit risky, then most likely you are not out of your depth, and so there's something that's being lost there, and there's something that you're not allowing yourself to explore. Like I said, my coming album, I'm planning on making an album, and so my promise to myself is to actually go out of my depth and to try to make sure that what I'm making next feels even more exposed, even more naked in a sense. Hopefully, I won't be having any nightmares in my sleep, but if I do, I know that it's all for a good cause. Okay, see you in the next one.